Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to this webinar, The Path to a Charter Engineer. And this webinar is hosted by Engineer Ireland and Young Engineer Society. I'm Mariam, Vice Chairing Young Engineer Society, and I wanna to introduce you our two speakers. And today, our first speaker is Andrew Kennedy, who is the professional title development executive at Engineer Ireland. Andrew will provide invaluable insights to the charter engineer process, shedding light on the application procedure and addressing common queries aligned with discussing the new guidelines and the regulation on membership. And following Andrew's presentation, we will hear from Bandile Sokhulu, a member of the Young Engineer Society, as he shares his professional journey and experiences pursuing charter engineer. Bandile is a charter structural engineer and is currently working with Kilgallen and Partners, consulting engineer company, and with over 6 years of experience in the construction and consulting industry. Bandile has contributed to numerous commercial and residential projects across South Africa, Tanzania, and Ireland. I'll pass on to Andrew.
Thanks, Mariam, and thanks everyone
Okay.
for attending here today. So what I'll do is, as Mariam pointed out, I'm going to look at kind of the application process, kind of just in a top level kind of overview. And just before we kind of have a look at that, we're kind of just going to go have a very kind of brief kind of either revision of kind of membership benefits, and for those of you who haven't kind of come across these yet, just to kind of re-familiarize yourself with what's available to you as a member of Engineers Ireland. So as a reminder, we are a very old organization from 1835, and we are multidisciplinary, and we have an amazing 25,000 plus members. We are a professional home for global engineers, and it's worth noting within the Republic of Ireland, we are the sole body for awarding registered professional titles. And on that point there about global engineers, it's worth noting that in 2023, of all the new members who joined, over 52% of them were a global engineer. So that's someone who achieved their qualifications outside of Ireland and the UK. So a huge amount coming to the organization, which is fantastic to see. Just very briefly in terms of benefits with Engineers Ireland, just make sure you're availing of not only these online events, but also in-person events, networking events. By being here, I suppose you're interested in getting recognized in your field with professional titles and attaining kind of an internationally recognized professional title. So that's fantastic to see. In addition, our publications, just to be aware of these, we've got weekly and monthly newsletters like our Connect and Engage. We've an Engineers Journal, and then we have more annual based newsletters that are available to you as a member of Engineers Ireland. So just make sure you are maximizing your membership. And also finally, just LinkedIn, everything that happens within the organization gets funneled through our LinkedIn page. So I presume probably all of you probably are on LinkedIn. So whether it's just job postings, interesting articles, events happening with Engineers Ireland around the country and online, they all get funneled through our LinkedIn page. So all that aside, obviously we're looking at the chartered engineer process in kind of as a top level format. A lot of people ask why become a chartered engineer, and that green diagram there, I suppose, gives people a lot of insight into the reasons why people should become a chartered engineer. But those points in the top left, these are kind of key pieces of feedback up to what we get back from members who have successfully achieved the title. So as I said earlier on, it's not just about professional recognition. These are also, as I said, internationally recognized titles. So if people travel to the likes of South Africa, New Zealand, Australia, Canada, you can get this title recognized within those countries due to that presence of a mutual recognition agreement. I suppose it's seen as a badge of excellence and really a seal of approval amongst not only your peers, but amongst your employer. And then obviously in turn, then it's a great way of maximizing your career opportunities. So in terms of eligibility, To apply for any professional title, you need to be a member with Engineers Ireland first for a minimum of 3 months. Secondly, obviously, we are a qualifications-based membership body, so everyone's route to a professional title is determined by their educational background. So you're going to have the prerequisite standard of engineering qualifications. Thirdly, you're going to obviously have to have built up enough experience and relevant experience that will in turn allow you to demonstrate the competences of a chartered engineer. And then finally, with these applications, you need to demonstrate a minimum of 35 hours of CPD per year, and that has to be in place for 2 years prior to you applying. And I'll go into a bit more detail on these as the slides progress. So some of you might have seen this online, on social, on our website, but in the last couple of weeks, we actually relaunched new regulations and new guidelines for all professional titles. So they're hugely kind of, the documents have been kind of brought into kind of like a more modern kind of stance. But prior to that, there was a lot of inconsistencies, whereas now there's a huge amount of clarity given, and they've been completely overhauled. So for those of you who might have been aware of this or might have been nervous about what was coming down the line, our first point there is that there was no radical changes proposed, as a lot of the competences were already well established and relevant fundamentally. What really was kind of front and center of this was that we needed to have consistency in terminology and also consistency in professional titles across them all. So from engineering technician to associate engineer and chartered engineer. In addition to that, it was about bringing in contemporary issues like sustainability, diversity, and inclusion that didn't feature in these applications, and also about aligning kind of with best practices on an international scale. And then also having consistency in the number of competences. So across all the professional titles, each of the competences had different numbers, they had different levels of sub-competence. So it just totally had to be kind of taken apart and built back up again. So all these new regulations, all these guidelines documents, there's now one for each route to title, and they're downloadable PDFs directly off the chartered page of the website. So again, there was always 3 routes to the charter title. This slide, there's a lot of content on it. Don't get bogged down with it. I'll go through it here briefly, and if there's any questions, we can run through them at the end. So there's still a standard route, there's still a further learning route, and there's still an experiential learning route. We'll leave out the bottom one for the time being. And all of these routes, you don't choose what route you're on. It's all based upon this first column here, your qualification. So when you join Engineers Ireland, as I said, your educational information is reviewed by our membership and qualification board. And based on their outcome on your educational background, your route to a professional title is determined. And when you're a full member with us, you'll be able to log into your profile and you'll see my professional title. You'll see what route is available to you there. If there's any kind of further questions, there's probably no point in going into too much detail on each of these, but just rest assured that there's still a standard route, there's still a further learning route, there's still an experiential learning route. They're all routes that you complete directly on your membership dashboard. And what we're going to be really kind of looking at here today is phase 2 of the process, which focuses around professional development. Those on experiential learning, you have 2 phases. Phase 1, educational formation, and phase 2, then professional development. So for today's session, we're leaving out phase 1 for the time being, but obviously if anyone has any questions afterwards or over the coming weeks and months, they can of course get in touch with me to determine what route they're on and if they have any questions on that. In terms of all our supports, everything is hosted on the chartered page of the website. So under membership, registered professional titles. So everything that an applicant needs to submit a successful application is held here, from these discipline-specific competency documents, which are fantastic, to our new regulations, to our standalone guidelines documents that show clear guidance for each of the individual routes. There's podcasts. There's now a document that looks at guidance for the professional interview, and there's now a video that is also gives you guidance on your supporters and the role that's involved for them. So a huge amount of content that you need to go through there to get an application submitted successfully. So the application, as I said, they're all completed online. And for those of you who haven't seen it, this is what the application process looks like. So they used to all be Word documents, and thankfully, they've all gravitated online in the last couple of years. So it's really user-friendly. You'll obviously work through these. Obviously, our down is not started. You can change them over to draft, to ready to submit, and you'll work through the application process in your own time. In the bottom left there, you can see that you can share your draft with your supporters for review as you currently work through it. And then when you sign off in the bottom right, then you do it all directly on the membership profile online. So really user friendly. And we'll have a look at some of these sections here now as the slides progress. So lots of these sections, while it looks like there's a lot to complete in the application, it's by no means, I suppose, a small application, but lots of these sections are just simple kind of tick boxes or kind of like data entry tables. And obviously there are reports and essays that we'll have a look at. But in terms of interview location, it's just a tick box. People go for an online versus an in-person interview. There's no right or wrong or pro or con. Go with what kind of you're most comfortable with. These next three sections, areas of expertise, engineering discipline, and areas of activity. So that's how we match you up with your interview panel if you get called for an interview. So you submit your application at a deadline, it's assessed, and you're told if you pass the assessment stage or not. And this information comes into play then when we try match you up with your interview panel. Our volunteer interviewers also fill out these three sections, and then based on both of your backgrounds, that's how you're aligned up with a panel that have experience in your educational background, or your engineering background, apologies. The first kind of big part of the application is your career summary report. And wherever there is kind of a text box, there'll always be a word count above it. And there's always a buffer of plus or minus 5%, and always adhere to the word count. If you're excessively over or under, applications can be returned. So it's chronological order, graduation to current date. And few kind of huge things to remember here and across all sections of the application. And it's where people fall down when they're completing it, is that this application has to be about you and your career. So you all work as part of teams and organizations, but this is your application and you need to put like your significant engineering work front and center. So those key roles, those key projects, highlighting what were your contributions, what were your responsibilities. Did you encounter problems? What solutions did you find? Judgments you've made, always using first person terms and making sure that what you're talking about, as I said, is your work, your responsibilities, and also in kind of tandem with that, how those roles, projects, responsibilities align up with the competences as well. So you're clearly showcasing that, yes, I've built up enough experience and these projects, these roles best showcase how my experience benchmarks against the competences. Another hugely important point, and again, it might seem quite simple, applications are returned on this basis at every deadline. Pay attention to your spelling, your grammar, your punctuation. It's a professional application. If there's excessive spelling errors, grammatical mistakes, applications are returned. So again, that's not just for this section, it's across the entire application. So with Chartered Engineer, there was always 5 competences and there still remains 5 competences. No major changes have happened to this part of the application process, as you can see. So there's still the 5, but what's really happened is that there's been a standardization across all competences now that there's 4 sub-competences within each competence. And those other things about diversity, inclusion, and sustainability being incorporated into the application. So what I would like everyone to do and to kind of familiarize yourself with the documents is after today's session, go onto the Chartered page of the website, start rooting around, having a look at all of the resources that are available, and in particular, have a look at the guidelines documents and understand not only for all the other sections, but for here, what is the definition of each of these competences and what are also the sub-competences that you need to meet in order to be successful in the application. So this slide here gives you an idea of what those sub-competences are. And as I said, that's standardization, that there's 4 sub-competences below each main competence. So again, these slides you can kind of access all of this content directly on the Chartered page, and it's good to kind of read through it again in your own time and familiarize yourself with what's available. So I touched on this at kind of one of the first few slides. So with the CPD aspect of the application, it's self-evaluated, and with all members of Engineers Ireland, you should be completing 35 hours of CPD per year. And for this application, you need to showcase 35 hours for a minimum of 2 years. Now, take note that I do not mean you need to be a member with Engineers Ireland for 2 years before applying. If, for example, someone has just joined Engineers Ireland in the last 6 months, you just need to show that during your time as being a member, you were completing the required number of hours of CPD, and that even prior to joining Engineers Ireland, or even prior to coming to Ireland, or if you're working remotely or attending this remotely, you just need to showcase that still you had that continuation of meeting 35 hours of CPD per year. Now, bear in mind, these are just minimums. We would always recommend if you have extra hours over and above 35 hours to showcase those, and at least in the application process, go back 3, 4, even 5 years and show those records. If you have them to hand, this is your chance for an applicant to kind of put everything down on paper or in the application. So make sure you have those minimum requirements. You'll see here on this next slide, there should never really be a problem in you meeting the baseline 35 hours across an entire 12 months. You can see here, like lunch and learns, presentations like this can go towards CPD, training. If you're preparing to deliver a paper or a presentation yourself, that can go towards CPD, any volunteer work. Self-directed learning is a great way of building up those hours. There's structured reading of journals and reports, online viewing of presentations. Any mentor-mentee can go towards CPD, conferences, courses, or further education. So what the assessors and the interviewers are looking for is that you're not just putting down one course for 2022 that was 40 hours. They want to see, well, did you attend lunch and learns? What were they? Did you do self-directed learning? So give a more kind of holistic, well-rounded approach to your CPD when you come around to applying for the title. With the application, you still have to do 2 essays. Both essays are 500 words each. Your first essay is an engineering topic of your own choice. So applicants should spend time thinking about what they're going to write about, make sure it's a subject that you're able to articulate your opinion. Like all sections of the application, your essays, if you get called for an interview, will be discussed by your panel. So you might have someone who has a difference of opinion, they might have an interest in your topic, so they will be there to discuss and elicit a bit more information out of you. The second essay, you'll find them on the chartered page of the website. Engineers Ireland, at every deadline, pick 5 essay titles, and applicants have to select one of those and write 500 words. So the first essay, a topic of your own choice, obviously engineering, and the second one you choose from a predetermined list that's chosen by Engineers Ireland. So with supporters, you might be aware that you need 2 supporters with a titles application. Another simple thing, and is where people fall down, is that they leave this to kind of the latter stages, or it's like one of the final things they do like 2 or 3 weeks before deadline. And it's where their application falls down and it's not successfully submitted. I would always suggest doing this as one of the first steps in the process. So confirm who your supporters are and let them know when it comes around what deadline you're going to go for, and work back from that deadline date and make sure you give them enough time and work closely with them. So we recommend that they are 2 chartered engineers, either with ourselves or with another professional engineering organization. That second point there, they have to be familiar with your formation. So we cannot source a supporter for you. You have to have maybe you worked with them in a previous country, in a previous organization, even a different team, or you're currently working with them now. But they have to be able to vouch for what you're putting in your application. And also, they need to guide you. So you should be sending them through different sections of the application, different iterations of the application, looking for feedback, then getting to identify deficits, and you having enough time to make any changes that they suggest well in advance of a deadline. If someone happens to ever only maybe have one chartered engineer, or they don't have chartered engineers, bear in mind we have something that's called an alternative supporter. They must have an accredited engineering degree as per the Washington Accord. They need to be pre-approved. You need to give us at least 2 months notice out from a deadline if you do have an alternative supporter. Any questions that are maybe I didn't cover there, or if you have any questions yourself, have a look at the video on the chartered page of the website first. And then if there's still any outstanding questions, obviously get in touch with us. So in terms of an interview, so as I said, the first part of the application process is the assessment of your written application. And if you pass that, you'll be notified. And then obviously you'll be told you're being called for an interview. The majority of them, I said earlier on, take place online, but you can opt for an in-person interview. And as I said, there's no right or wrong or pro or con. There's usually a panel of 2 or 3 chartered engineers. And at the very beginning, you're given 10 minutes to give a verbal presentation. Like the application, like the presentation, and the remainder of the interview, remember this is about you. And again, it's where people fall down at the interview stage. Talk about your key roles, your key projects, first person terms, always making sure that what you're presenting on showcases how your work aligns up with the competences. So again, you're clearly keeping those 2 things to the forefront of your mind. And again, on the chartered page of the website, there is a document that looks at the interview. Very quickly, two deadlines every year, a January and a June. If June is the one we have upcoming next, so just to go through that, it's always the last Friday in June. If someone goes for that deadline, applications assessed July and August. You'll be told then if you pass the assessment stage, but it could be anywhere from September right through to December before you're called for an interview. Similarly with January, last Friday, January, applications assessed in February and March. If you pass that, it can be anywhere from March right through to June before you're called for an interview. So always the last Friday in January, always the last Friday in June, just for simplicity. And finally, hopefully down the line, when you do achieve a professional title, you'll want to showcase that on a public scale, whether that's through your email, a banner, a signature, or on LinkedIn. You'll applicants who achieve a professional title will have access to these through their membership dashboard to download them, which is obviously hopefully going to be the case for all of you on this call. So look, that was really just a broad overview. I know we've a lot kind of to get through in terms of Bandile going through his presentation as well, and questions and answers. So I hope that's clarified any questions that you had and didn't kind of cause any confusion. But in the interim, I'm going to hand over to Bandile, and then we can open it up to a Q&A then afterwards. So thanks for your attention there.
Thanks, Andrew. Basically, I'll be speaking from a young engineer's perspective, and this is based on my experience towards my professional registration. These are the type of projects that I've normally worked on, which range from your private residential developments to your sugar plants, to your commercial developments and social housing.
Yeah, so you just need to share the presentation when you're ready. Thanks.
There you go.
Perfect. Thanks.
So my apologies for that. So this is the nature of projects that I've been involved in, which range from your PV installation to your industrial developments, all the way to your private residential and commercial projects. And basically, from my perspective, I'll be just going through a list of milestones that I think are important throughout the progression of your career towards your professional registration. So the first milestone would be defining, investigating, and analyzing, being able to define, investigate, and analyze an engineering problem. Milestone 2 would be design, develop solutions to complex engineering problems. 3 would be comprehend and apply advanced knowledge with, using good practice, specialist information, jurisdictional, and local knowledge. And milestone 4 would be being able to manage engineering activities. Milestone 5 would be communicating clearly with others. Milestone 6 would be meeting all legal regulatory requirements to protect the health and safety of persons. 7 would be conduct engineering activities ethically. 8 would be exercise sound judgment and take responsibility. 9 would be continuing your professional development. So I'll be just using some of the projects that I've worked in as an example, just to portray what I feel is required throughout your progression to meet all of these milestones. So in terms of defining being able as an engineer, being able to define, investigate, and analyze an engineering problem. For example, this project is a conveyor expansion project, which involves a lot of chrome, manganese, coal, and magnetite transportation and processing. So here the client, this is a transfer house. So the client wanted to demolish one of the existing columns as part of the project, which comprised of new warehousing, which is your portal frame structures, steel structures. So the clients wanted to demolish one of the columns at the lower ground floor, and to obviously go about defining and investigating this engineering problem, from a structural perspective, you'd have to do your due diligence and do your investigations and find out the existing ground conditions. Take it all the way through to your existing foundations, your existing building. And just to show you, as an example, what I had done here is obviously is a quick sketch of an analysis, analyzing the structure. So the solution here was to create a triangular structural steel modification to allow for this column at the bottom to be demolished, and milestone 2 would be designing or developing solutions to complex engineering problems. So based on milestone 1, this designing and developing the solution would typically entail construction drawings, which have your details to your solution. Just to clarify, this solution here, as I mentioned, was a strut and tie sort of structural steel modification, which involved structural steel beams, which were diagonal beams, and which allowed for the demolishing of the column there at the bottom. So just to show you guys, so give you some clarity, this is what was required. Sorry. So you've got your structural steel diagonal beams to hold up the roof. And you've got the column there at the bottom, which had been cut, and there were still props remaining at the bottom. And the photo on the right-hand side is after the props are removed, to essentially allow for the conveyor to make its way into the transfer house. And this obviously involves a lot of design, investigation, and just seeing whether this modification will be adequate for the capacity of the building, its columns and its foundations. And milestone 3 would be being able to, as an engineer, comprehend, apply advanced knowledge using good practice, specialist knowledge, information, jurisdictional and local knowledge. So this is a project that I worked on, which was a refinery. This refinery they manufacture malic acids and phthalic acids and acidulants. And the client here had an issue with their plants, the structural steel plants undergoing settlement. So there's quite a lot of differential settlement in this plant here, and you could actually see it. You could actually see the plant leaning over to an extent. So you'd obviously, from my experience, I'd had to undergo my personal due diligence, and knowing that there are certain areas in this complex problem that I don't have much experience in, so I'd have to consult with an engineer, a geotechnical engineer for that sake. So we found that this was a fumaric and malic acid processing plant, and the site was underlain by dune sands with calcium carbonate content. So these tanks ended up leaking. So we found that one of the tanks were leaking, and these tanks were the liquid would leak off and leach into the foundations. So, and once it leaches into the foundations, it forms a calcium carbonate. And that, in a sense, created that sort of differential settlement in the foundation. So the idea here was to prevent one, stop the leak, and prop up the structure, back up and pilot, essentially rig the structure up and pile it back until it's plumb. So yeah, just from my experience, it's just being able to comprehend, apply your advanced knowledge, and knowing that you can only specialize in a certain discipline, and knowing where your limits are and being able to consult other specialists who specialize in the information that you require. So as part of milestone 3, obviously developing your engineering solutions by way of construction drawings. And this was a solution. This was a ground beam on top of piles, and essentially, as I mentioned earlier, the proposed solution was to jack up the structure and pack it back with your grouts and essentially underpin the existing foundations. Milestone 3 is being able to manage engineering activities. So this pretty much ranges from keeping a quality control file, conducting pre and post concrete inspections, being able to issue site sketches for any clashes on site, being able to do your quality control inspections for any steelwork or fabrication, and just keeping a daily site diary of the progression on site. Milestone 5 would be being able to communicate clearly with others. So this you can do in by way of construction drawings with project specific, whether it's concrete or steel or whatever your discipline is. Being able to communicate via email effectively, being able to, as I mentioned earlier, issue site sketches or answer any technical queries that can come up from site for the project that you're working on. Being able to compile or create fee proposals detailing the scope of works, deliverables required, and terms and conditions. Milestone 6 would be to consider also is just be aware that there are legal and regulatory requirements for the work you're doing. Being able to meet all of these requirements and legal requirements for the projects that you're involved in, and just for also considering the health and safety of the public and those who are involved in sites. So these vary, and they range from your being able to compile your stability certificates and erection, being able to specifying your specification, your general notes. So your general notes must meet all the regulatory and legal requirements being for the project, right? Milestone 7 would be conducting your engineering activities ethically. So this, for one item, would be your competency, just ensuring that all your engineering work that you have undertaken is within your capabilities. And where outside of your capabilities, and as I mentioned earlier, just consult with and appoint a specialist to undertake those duties. Specialist being a geotechnical engineer or hydrologist or environmentalist, because there are a lot of disciplines that would be involved in a project. Integrity, just also ensuring that all your drawings, all your information that you're issuing out to sites have undergone an internal review, and certification of any as-built structures from a structural perspective, just ensuring that you've undertaken your or you've conducted your personal due diligence by carrying out site investigations, reanalyzing structures, and ensuring the building meets regulatory requirements. Milestone 8 would be being able to exercise sound judgment and take responsibility for your designs. So this here was a bagasse boom which had overturned, and the client was wondering why it had overturned, and so I had to take it upon myself to find out what could be the reason. And using the available information that you have on site, and you'd obviously undergo your investigation. So here I had to reanalyze the structure and just to see how it behaves with its load and this wind loading that acts on the structure. And eventually I found that the reason why the structure overturned is because of the wind hitting the back of the balance, hitting the back of the balance mass of the bagasse structure. So the resolution to this was to increase the mass just to prevent it from overturning again. And yeah, this is basically an example of being able to use sound judgment, analyzing an engineering problem and taking full responsibility for it. Milestone 9 would be just continuing your professional development. Just ensure that you attend your numerous CPD registered courses to keep up to date with the industry development. Just keep record of your chartership development plan, what milestones or objectives you'd like to reach within, say, the next 2 or 3 years. Read up on study publication, whether it's Engineers Island, iStruct-E, or other engineering articles. Research, study, and implement the information that you gather. So from my perspective, because I'm a structural engineer, whatever information I'd probably gather would be, for instance, finite element analysis, your 3D structural modeling, just figuring out how to integrate any artificial intelligence in the work that we do, in the designs. Also just future training and development in engineering design methods and construction methods, just being aware of that. And also registration with an internationally recognized body. From my end, that would be your iStruct-E. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's it. Thanks, Mariam.